This is the classic stereotype of Poland. A poor, grey, post-communist country that has little to offer to the rest of the continent, maybe apart from cheap, unqualified labor. But here's the thing. That stereotype is definitely no longer true. And Poland of today looks more like this. In just 3 decades, Poland's economy grew more than tenfold. Plus, apart from becoming an economic surprise, Poland is also rapidly becoming a military superpower, both willing and able to alone stand up to the little man in the Kremlin. Gone are the days that Poland had to depend on the likes of Germany or France for its economic well-being and security. Germany, on the one hand, has a grand total of 1 functioning modern tank in its arsenal, so I'm not even sure if you're allowed to call it an arsenal in that case, and ammunition to only sustain 2 days of intense fighting at best. France, on the other, has its own issues at home at the moment, and in that climate, Poland seems to be the only one taking things seriously in terms of defense. The country is spending more on defense than any other NATO ally, the US included. And yes, it does have more than 1 tank capable of actually fighting. So, who knows, maybe one day, if Vlad really does decide to go all in and openly attacks Europe, which may well happen, the Polish army could be the only one able to effectively resist and therefore defend us all. So how the heck did we get here? How did an economic dwarf that used to be a synonym for cheap chocolate and maybe rip-off clothes manage to embarrass the once great economic tigers of Europe? And how has it managed to itself become one? Most importantly, why is it a massive deal to all of us? Let's find out. I'm Jan, this is Pulse, and as always, thanks to everyone subscribing to the channel and liking this video. Special love goes to everyone supporting me already on herohero.co/Pulse. And now, let's dive in. It doesn't exactly take a genius to understand why Poland has been taking defense so seriously over the years. I mean, just look at the map of Europe. You have Russia and the former Soviet Union in the immediate east, Germany in the west. That's literally a deadly cocktail. And as you would expect, Poland has really been invaded, defeated, and carved up many times in the not-so-distant past. In World War II, for example, the Soviets and Germans combined caused the deaths of around 20% of Poland's entire pre-war population. Think about it, 20% of the whole population. So already back then, at the latest, did the Poles understand that they have to literally fight for their survival if they want to stay on that map of Europe. And now, cut to today. To the west of Poland, you have a modern Germany that has finally understood it has a much better chance to actually dominate Europe through the economy, rather than by trusting subpar Austrian painters to do the job for them via, other means. But in the east, you still have Russia, and now it's puppet Belarus, where basically nothing has changed since World War II. The Kremlin still believes that basically every country that just happens to border it is fair game and can be swallowed up at any time by the Kremlin if the emperor so wishes. And as any Ukrainian would confirm to you these days, of course. So for Poland, given its geographical location that unfortunately cannot be changed, and the fact that it still unfortunately happens to border Russia and its puppet, this all means that it still must strengthen its defense and take it very seriously. Because the psychopath in the Kremlin is, as we've all seen, not afraid to start illegal wars whenever he so wishes. And only a complete idiot would not be preparing for such an option, because he can decide to attack anytime. Now here's the thing, Poland has been a full NATO member since 1999. Let's face it, within NATO, pretty much everyone pretended, until very recently that is, that the United States was the parent basically. Always there to help, ready to hand out some extra pocket money when you've spent too much on drinking and are not able to cover your own obligations, and also always ready to get rid of a bully for us when they've stolen our lunchbox yet again. That's exactly why Germany had a whopping 1 functioning tank at its disposal, and why hardly anyone was spending the agreed 2% of their GDP on defense just a few years back. We basically believed that the US would be always there to save us if shit really did hit the fan. But of course, this all changed, or at least we hoped it would, when Putin turned into an Austrian painter 2.0, and when Orange Man, seen here, came back to power in the US. With it, the prospect of the US actually isolating itself and therefore abandoning Europe became unfortunately very real. But in Poland, things have been very different all along. While the country is very divided and remains so on other political issues, think of abortion, for example, defense has actually always been a matter of national consensus in Poland, and the population, as well as all major political parties, agree that it should remain a top priority. Both the PIS, now in opposition, and the now governing Civic Platform agree that Poland must massively increase defense investments. And, looking back at that map of Europe, that's kind of understandable. Unlike other countries in the region, Poland actually doesn't have the comfort of having a buffer separating it from Russia. It itself is the buffer, and therefore it needs to act accordingly. And the fact that both major political parties agree that defense should stay a priority is actually a really big deal, because now, even when the government changes, which it will one day because Poland is a democracy, the commitment to defense will stay the same. And that consensus is actually quite an achievement in today's fragmented world, if you ask me. I think the last time we were so united on anything, it was when we thought that frosted tips were the pinnacle of hairstyling. Now, as a result of that consensus in Poland, the country has increased its defense spending to some 4.2% of its GDP in 2024 already, and is aiming for 4.7% by the end of this year, 2025. That actually comes really close to Trump's wet dreams of everyone spending at least 5% of GDP on defense, and also is actually much more than the US alone has been spending. Now, to demonstrate just how massive the investments are, take this. The size of Poland's military should actually soon double to 300,000 soldiers. Already today, it's actually larger in size than the army of Germany and France, which wasn't the case as recently as 2021, so the increase in the size of the Polish forces is quite rapid. It's also spearheading its own defense initiatives and heavily fortifying its borders. And Poland is also buying cutting-edge equipment, including 32 pieces of F-35 fighters, Patriot missiles, and it has ordered more HIMARS missiles than the US itself currently has at its own disposal. Now, obviously, we're not a military channel, and I'm not looking to become one either. This is just to say and demonstrate that things in Poland have really been changing rapidly. But the much more important question for us here on Prague, now that we know how we got here, is this. Why does it even matter? Or does it? Well, to answer that question, we obviously have to start with this guy, Donald Trump, seen here in orange, as always. Because seeing how often his views on pretty much anything change and how cozy he is with dictators all around the world, it has to be unsettling to everyone in their right mind right now. Just think about how disastrous the so-called peace negotiations with Russia have been so far. No tangible results, maybe apart from some more bombed kindergartens by the Russian dictator. And watching that, do you really think that Trump would be willing to go to war if, say, Estonia or Lithuania or any other small NATO ally were attacked? Do you really think so? He's questioned it himself multiple times. I still would love to think that he would eventually come to our defense, sure, but relying on anything this guy says or does right now would be insane. So the fact that Poland is willing to take on much more of the weight for defending itself and thereby Europe really matters to all of us, because you really don't want to rely on, Germany's only functioning tank when Trump eventually does leave us hanging. But on the other hand, it's not like Poland is ready to give up hopes with the US entirely just yet. It is still trying to keep the transatlantic link alive as much as it can, and it's doing so by trying to involve the US as much as possible. That's exactly why it has, for example, hosted a US-led multinational battle group on its own territory with thousands of US soldiers. There's also a brand new hypermodern US ballistic missile base in Poland right now, and the country has become a major logistics hub for all the Western aid flowing to Ukraine. That even led to a senior US Army official recently calling Poland the most important ally to the US in Europe. And that's exactly the point. Trump and his lackeys apparently don't want to care much about Europe, if at all.
I comprehend extraordinarily well. Probably better than anybody that you've interviewed in a long time.
But by involving the US so much, the hope is, in Poland and the rest of Europe, that it will then be more difficult to really abandon Poland and thus Europe if shit really does hit the fan. Because now the US has a big stake in Poland and therefore might be willing to step in more. And thirdly, Poland is also actively looking for alternatives to NATO and protection by the US so that if in a potential worst-case scenario the US really does decide to leave us, Europe is still not left entirely defenseless. That's why Prime Minister Tusk of Poland has been pushing for much more defense cooperation in the EU, which is the second best alternative to NATO for Poland, including much more joint EU defense spending, creating joint EU battle groups, and also allowing joint EU debt to be able to buy arms together as a united European Union. Now, it won't probably surprise you at this point that defense is also the top priority of the currently ongoing Polish presidency of the EU, because that gives the Polish government a platform to push those sometimes really bold initiatives much easier because it has the central stage. And with some of those initiatives, Poland has even gone against the reluctance of the former European so-called giants, Germany and France, which have been traditionally very skeptical and reluctant to accept any sort of EU common decision-making on defense. But I mean, who knows, the dramatic changes in the security environment in Europe might as well force them to change their minds and cooperate more. And that all also has an important side effect for Poland, which is that it has put Poland firmly into a leadership position in the EU and maybe even NATO. Now, all in all, Poland's assertive stance on defense may have been born out of necessity rather than their burning desire to lead Europe, sure, but nonetheless it is still hugely altering the balance of leadership in NATO and the EU, and it's hugely important for the whole region. I mean, the United States is preoccupied with a man who makes no sense most of the time, may have authoritarian tendencies, and has also bought himself a shiny new Tesla, so I presume he has no time for politics right now. In Europe, on the other hand, the traditionally dominant duo has been struggling as well. Germany may have proclaimed a Zeitenwende, but its government and chancellor have been so disastrously weak that they failed to implement any meaningful changes, maybe in fear of angering Russia, the aggressor. Plus, the German economy may well face a recession quite soon, which would also drag much of the continent down with them as well. France, on the other hand, has had its own share of political uncertainties, to say the very least. President Macron clearly likes being the center of attention, of course, having launched grand new initiatives like the European Political Community or the Intervention Initiative. But he too has been slow to fully arm either France or Ukraine, and didn't really produce any tangible results, if we don't count a number of pointless phone calls with Putin. In this climate, Poland seems to be the only one taking defense in Europe really seriously, and therefore is clearly emerging as a new military superpower. It may be out of necessity, but that doesn't matter. It's still hugely important for the whole region. And what may be even more important for us is that Poland is likely nudging the EU as a whole toward greater unity and resolve, which the EU has failed to do over the past 40 or so years. Of course, uncertainties still remain, don't get me wrong. I mean, who knows what this guy does tomorrow, or this guy, or even this guy. Plus, it will be enormously difficult for Poland itself to maintain its new role. The country is still deeply divided on other issues. The massive buildup of the army will cost a lot of money, which will need to be taken from somewhere else maybe. And there may not be even enough men or women to quickly fill up all the new units that are being created in the army right now. But one thing is clear, whether Europe's ready or not, Poland is already leading. And here at Prague Pulse, we're watching every move. So subscribe if you care about Central Europe's future. And again, a huge thank you to everyone supporting me either here on YouTube or on herohero.co/PraguePulse. You really mean the world to me. This has been Jan. See you next time.